All right, Colts Nation. So a few things to talk about today. One, just a quick follow-up on yesterday's episode, both regarding the linebacker position for the Indianapolis Colts and Anthony Richardson. Also, apparently, not an April Fool's prank. According to Tony Pauline, the overwhelming belief during the Pro Day circuit, which has been going on since the beginning of March, an opportunity for teams outside of the setting of the Combine to watch some guys do some drills. The overwhelming belief right now is that Chris Ballard would prefer an offensive tackle in round one. So we definitely have to talk about that. It's a piece of news that I'm sure is gonna have a lot of you guys in a frenzy, to say the least. But we will start at the linebacker position. Many of you guys, kind of as a response to my take in yesterday's episode, making a very astute observation in regard to Chris Ballard's ability to draft the linebacker position, citing guys like the linebacker formerly known as Darius, Zaire Franklin, EJ Speed, Bobby Okereke, and using that as an argument, kind of as a way to talk about how the Colts can wait to draft a linebacker past round 1 and 2. And the reason this was brought up is because I have mentioned the idea of them going ahead and drafting a Jihad Campbell as opposed to a tight end at the number 14 overall pick. Of course, as you know, we lost EJ Speed. Grant Stewart also not on the team anymore. He's with Detroit. And right now, the Colts have brought in absolutely nobody at linebacker, and it was a position going into the offseason that we already thought needed a little bit of help. So I simply said, hey, tight end, sure, that's one option. But at the same time, a Jihad Campbell, not a bad move, particularly when you have a Dallas Goedert as a potential option for trade. Now, I brought that up not as a way to say that's definitely what they should do, but again, a lot of you guys said, hey, Chris Ballard does a pretty good job at drafting that position. You sure we need that in round 1? I don't disagree with your point that Ballard does draft linebackers well. He has a rich history of doing well at drafting that position, but there is a bit more to the story than just that, and it is very simple. Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed, despite the fact that those two guys were very good draft picks given where they were taken, EJ Speed in round 5, Zaire Franklin in round 7, really a phenomenal pick. Those guys started as special teams players and worked their way up into the starting lineup over the course of 3 to 4 years. On the other hand, Shaquille Leonard and Bobby Okereke, they were drafted within the first 3 rounds for the Indianapolis Colts, and the Indianapolis Colts can't afford to have a guy at linebacker right now that they need 3 to 4 years to develop. They need someone who could go out there and play today. If not, you're just out there with Zaire Franklin and Jalen. I'm the worst with names. Jalen Carlisle, who's a safety, moved to linebacker, rookie last year, going into his second year. He was like a 5th-round pick, a 4th-round pick. You can't go into the season with just that as your guys, okay? So they need someone, whether it be through free agency, whether it be through a trade, or whether it be someone in the draft in the first 2 rounds that they can have come in and make an impact today. That's my point there. Now, as for the offensive tackle, we'll get into that because I'm sure quite a few of you are waiting for my commentary there. Listen, it's Chris Ballard. I mean, are you surprised with the notion that he may go offensive line early in the draft? Now, here's the thing with it. You do look at Braden Smith right now. Last year of his deal, obviously they had to take a little bit of money away from him. They restructured his deal so they could keep him on the team. But there's questions about just how often he's going to be available between the injury history and whatever personal issues he was going through last year. That is a question mark. Is Braden Smith the right tackle for the future, even at 28 years old? You lost Ryan Kelly, you lost Will Fries, and you got some young guys with some promise on the team in Gonsalves and maybe Blake Freeland if he could improve as a pass blocker, Tanner Bortolini, but at the same time, these guys are unproven. A big-time offensive tackle for this team on the right side of the line, when you have Bernard Raymond on the left side of the line, it was not the worst thing in the world. Like, realistically, it could be a pick that does set this team up for years if they hit it, which, quite frankly, they usually do up front on the offensive line. Now, is it a sexy pick? No. But as Colts fans, do I feel to some degree we take for granted the fact that we consistently have strong offensive line play? Yes, actually, I do feel that way. And a move like this is kind of one of the reasons that our offensive line consistently plays as well as it does and can ensure that we have both of our tackles of the future on lock, which, not for anything, is not a bad position to be in at all, particularly if you're going to have a young quarterback behind center, whether it be Anthony Richardson this year and next year and into the future, or Lord forbid, you need to bring in someone else in next year's draft. Making sure that offensive line is intact is a lesson that Colts fans, quite frankly, should really kind of appreciate and have learned already because of what happened with Andrew Luck, who hired Frank Reich, Sleepy Frank Reich, to be the head coach of Stanford. Kind of a cool story. Not much to talk about there, but figured I'd point it out for those of you who are unaware. And then on top of that, you bring in the offensive tackle, and you would have flexibility this season with Braden Smith and Gonsalves. Like right now, it's assumed that Matt Gonsalves is going to move into guard. But maybe if you draft this tackle, Braden Smith can move into guard, and he was drafted as a guard before getting moved to tackle. Or if Gonsalves plays guard, he can stay there in the future. So, okay, you have this tackle now, and then if Braden Smith gets hurt, you have this tackle to come in for him, and then you have the tackle in the future as well. If next year you opt out and say, we're done with the Braden Smith business, we're out of the Braden Smith business. So listen, this is a move they're going to have to do anyway at some point, in my opinion. So I would not hate it per se, but at the same time, there are a lot of moving parts there as it pertains to this offseason. Perhaps a topic we could expand upon another day, because quite frankly, not much the point of today's episode. This is the point of today's episode. Finally, Anthony Richardson. I have spent so much time on the negative about him over here on this channel this offseason. Now, if you're to go back to his rookie year and last year, there is no one talking more glowingly about Anthony Richardson than I was, but only because I believe that to be true. With that said, I want to balance out the negativity I've had on him this offseason just so you guys understand. I do see both sides of this thing. I'm just kind of weighing towards the one that I feel is a little bit more, I don't know, just kind of feels like it needs to be discussed a little bit more. But I can't also do that, right, without doubling down. So if I'm going to go positive, I do have to make sure you understand the reality of the quarterback situation before I then jump onto your side and give you your point of view, okay? Because there's a belief out there by a lot of Colts fans but he has not been given a fair shake by this team, that Anthony Richardson has not been given the chance to succeed from the Indianapolis Colts. And not only is that notion untrue, it's borderline delusional. Like it's just a straight up coping mechanism to protect yourself from the truth. This guy, Anthony Richardson, was drafted with the number 4 overall pick from the Indianapolis Colts, despite not having won anything in college, despite not having been all that much of an impressive passer in college. He was given the starting job from day one after beating out Gardner Minshew, showing some promise, but ultimately promise through the lens and the understanding that he was a project quarterback. He was there to be developed, okay? He proved nothing that year in terms of his ability to be a long-term starter for a team, and of course got shut down for the season because of the injury, which is of course something that's all too familiar and something I won't even bring up today, okay? Other than that moment right there. Then following that season, he was literally handed the job in year 2, despite the fact, again, we didn't know exactly what he was. Year 2, no competition with Flacco and Ellinger as clear backups to him. It was the AR show. You knew it, I knew it, and most importantly, he knew it, which seemingly was part of the damn problem because he came out and looked worse than he did in a limited sample size in year 1. And then all of a sudden, we're hearing questions about his commitment to being a professional quarterback. Those things started coming up. Are those 2 years not an opportunity for Anthony Richardson to prove himself, to at least prove that he takes seriously the fact that he fully understands the privilege that he has being the starting quarterback of a team, being the franchise quarterback of a team? These were questions that we never had about Anthony Richardson in terms of his work ethic, but seemingly he had grown complacent to some degree, which in part was, in all fairness, the organization's fault for giving him the keys to the future of the franchise, maybe a little prematurely. But at the same time, on the other side, number 4 overall pick, what the hell are you supposed to do if you're Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen? Sit there and make it like you didn't draft him number 4 overall? You got to let this guy go out there and play. But it wasn't just them, and this is the point I want to get to. Have you ever thought for a second that fans like yourself, assuming that what I'm about to say applies to you, of course, some of you are going to be like, that's not me at all. I'm not talking to you. Have you ever assumed that despite the fact that you literally with your own eyes watched a guy who clearly was not ready to be an NFL quarterback, clearly, you ignored your eyes, anointed him king, and continuously let him off the hook. And when he was going out there and getting worse week after week after week, and then got benched, all of you guys were up in arms about it and let him off the hook for the poor play. He's 21 years old. He's online. He sees what's being said about him. Did you ever think that the overwhelming affection and excuses made by the fan base, despite the evidence showing that he was not getting it done, do you think that maybe you, the fans, to some degree, played a role in his complacency, in his comfort, in his seemingly lack of any worry at all that he wasn't going to be the franchise quarterback for this team moving forward? You know, the word accountability gets thrown around so often by this fan base until Anthony Richardson is involved. Then it's all about patience. Then it's all about development. Oh, he's young. Give him time. You benched him for playing bad? How can you possibly do that? Meanwhile, on the other side of things, you were talking about cutting guys and benching them for not playing well. Again, only when it's not the quarterback. And I understand we're a fan base that has suffered at the quarterback position, okay? We have. After being right, it's one thing if we were the Chicago Bears, okay? And you would look at the organization and say, we've never had a damn quarterback. You're talking about Jim McMahon and Jay Cutler as the two best we've ever had. At least those people are used to not having one, okay? But you're the Indianapolis Colts. You had Peyton Manning. You had Andrew Luck. And the 2000s, up until Andrew Luck retired, we're all hunky-dory, okay? It's almost better to have not had something than to have had it and lost it, right? Like, you don't know what you have until it's gone. And right now, Colts fans are thirsty for a quarterback, okay? And because of that, of course, we wanted to support Anthony Richardson with everything we had. But at the same time, if we're going to give you this excuse of saying you're young, you're developmental, we need to be patient with you, that's all true. I think patience at the quarterback position is something that these days is kind of a lost art. But also, we're only going to follow that if you're putting your absolute best foot forward in developing your game. If you're not, the deal is off. Like, we can't sit here and talk about your potential and talk about your development if we don't trust that you're doing everything you can to reach that potential. That's when it's no bueno at that point, okay? That's when you have broken the deal, okay? If we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, you have to make sure to return that in a way that enables us to continue trusting you. And that ultimately is where the Colts are at right now. Now, there is good news, of course, and I promised I was going to get to this. There's reason to be optimistic. And I want to make sure for those of you guys who think I'm just an Anthony Richardson hater, that I cover that side of things too. But before we do, you know what it is? My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask everyone watching and enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot it a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Of course, subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're on our way to 4,000 subscribers over here on the YouTube channel. What a milestone that would be. We want to be there by the start of next season. So if you keep coming back, enjoying the content, haven't hit the button yet, or perhaps it's your first day and you're enjoying what you're hearing, maybe it's the day you press that button. But if not, don't worry, no pressure. I will be here until I'm an old man. I will be here in a rocking chair looking like the grandpa from Courage the Cowardly Dog. Okay? I'm going to be here that long talking about the Colts. So if not today, one day, I think I'll win you over. Audio listeners, leave a 5-star, 5-star, 5-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying the show, but most importantly, be civil in the comments section if you're engaging over here on the YouTube channel. We want to make sure this is a place where everyone could come, share their opinions, learn a little something, and not have to worry about being degraded and shit on for the fact that maybe their opinion isn't the smartest, which does happen from time to time, but take it as an opportunity to educate, not tear them down. You don't know what they're going through, and that is what it is. But back to what it is that we were talking about, and these are the positives about Anthony Richardson. Now, the first one and most obvious one is the talent that he possesses is so obvious, which is part of what makes it so aggravating with Anthony Richardson. I mean, when you combine the size, the speed, the strength, this is a guy who has talent that is, you don't want to say the most talented ever because it's kind of a little bit of hyperbole, but if you're talking about physical raw skills and separating that from production, just literal tools. Like, the ability to make every throw, the ability to run, the ability to break tackles, and the ability to really kind of move around damn well in the pocket. Like that guy is hard to take down back there. The talent for Anthony Richardson is so obvious. And one of my favorite parts about his game that does not get enough credit. A lot of people say we don't need a running quarterback. We need a pocket quarterback. The one thing about Anthony Richardson, and I always plug this when I mention this, if you look up Anthony Richardson pocket passer, you're going to look at this mug right here. Perhaps before you even knew about the show, I was the only person who ever observed the fact that this was a guy that wanted to be a pocket passer. It's one of my favorite parts about Anthony Richardson. With all that talent, with all that running ability, for him to look at a guy like Tom Brady and say that's the sustainable way to play football and have that type of foresight at the age of 20 years old, listen, I love that. Now, the downside, of course, is that he's not there yet. But if you watch him play, he's a guy that when they're not running him intentionally, when it's not a designed play, he's trying to just stand there in the pocket and throw the football. And that's the sustainable way to play quarterback in this league. But did he perhaps underestimate what it took to be that guy? Yeah, probably. That's in fact very, very likely. But I think Richardson tries to play quarterback the right way. Unfortunately, he's just falling short of doing it. Next thing that I think is a positive about Anthony Richardson, the way he responded from being benched by Shane Steichen, I thought said a lot about who he was as a person. Like that was a moment that I thought I was like, okay, we're looking at the real Anthony Richardson. That's the guy we drafted. That's the human being we drafted. Like perhaps he lost his way, but that was the guy. Like not only in terms and how he spoke to the media, because it's one thing to just go out there, say the right things and not do the right things. But when they put him back into the lineup against the New York Jets, which I was able to watch in person, he was absolutely spectacular. It was just a glimpse of how great he can be. I mean, you were watching a game with guys like Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson and really some talented players on the Jets, even if they weren't performing the way they should have been. But my point in bringing that up, the Colts, they had Jonathan Taylor, they had Josh Downs, they had Quentin Nelson, and Anthony Richardson was the best player on the field that day, period. End of story. Case in point. That's what this guy can bring to the table. Best game of his career in the first game back. Again, that shows a lot about his character, in my opinion, and it shows a little bit about his grit. It shows that there's something there. He kind of has a knack for showing up in those moments when you need him to. You just need him to be a bit more consistent. Like you can't just do the Tim Tebow and wait till the fourth quarter because not for anything over the course of the game, it might get away from you before that point. But some of those questions after being benched and coming back into the lineup about his work ethic started to get addressed and started to say, hey, he's showing up, he's being consistent, all that stuff. Whether or not that was coach speak, we don't know. But now, of course, we hear that he is putting in work this offseason, that he's rejuvenated, okay, and embracing the competition that is coming with Daniel Jones. The signing of Daniel Jones, much like the benching, can be something that keeps Anthony Richardson on his toes, keeps him motivated, keeps him from getting complacent. And I think the goal ultimately for the Indianapolis Colts right now, and I think to some degree this is why they brought in Daniel Jones, if not the entire reason, is to ensure that the guy they got after him being benched in Anthony Richardson, from a preparation and urgency standpoint, from the idea that you are not going to be complacent, you are going to earn this every single day. They want to make sure that guy is here to stay, which is why you hear them saying that these guys are going to be splitting reps. And while you're all scared that Daniel Jones might start week one, I'm looking at it and saying, well, yeah, duh. You have to believe that. That's exactly how it has to be. If the organization is trying to light a fire under Anthony Richardson's ass and let him know, you are not out of the woods yet here, guy. If you can't convince the fan base that Anthony Richardson might not start, in what world are you supposed to convince Anthony Richardson that Anthony Richardson might not start? And I think the Colts are looking at it now and they're saying, hey, we think we made a mistake in terms of handing this guy the keys to the kingdom before he fully earned it. And if you're to look here half full at the situation with Anthony Richardson, perhaps he's not lazy. Perhaps he does want to do everything he can to be the best quarterback can be. And perhaps he was just naive and didn't fully understand what that took. Joe Flacco, despite coming in and being a mentor and being a guy that's a veteran in the league that's produced, you go back to kind of with the Baltimore Ravens, those guys always looked at him as kind of like laissez-faire, which is kind of like just relaxed. And you saw it in his press conference. You want to talk about a guy who kind of has that, like, fire in the pit of his stomach. Joe Flacco, maybe not the guy. Gardner Minshew was that guy, which is why I think you saw a better version of Anthony Richardson in year one. The thing now is that he has to be able to do that himself. He needs to be self-motivated. He can't require external factors to come in and drive that if he's going to have a long career and a successful career at that. But there is a chance, which is my overarching point and a reasonable one, that this was simply the wake-up call that Anthony Richardson needed at this point in his career between the benching and the signing of Daniel Jones. I think there's a reasonable chance that it was simply a wake-up call and he's learned his lesson. Of course, not only is that what we are hoping is the case, but again, a reasonable possibility that it actually is. And if he works like a guy whose spot on this roster in terms of being the guy at quarterback is not guaranteed at minimum, we and the Indianapolis Colts end up with our answer to just how good Anthony Richardson can be. And if you ask me, I think we'll have an idea real early in the season if he wins this job. Doing all these work on his mechanics this offseason, trying to make it where he has a consistent follow through that he can rely on, play in and play out on Sundays, so he's not thinking about his mechanics during the game and he could just go out there and play free. The work he's putting in this offseason, even if he's not a finished product come next season, we should see a difference between the guy we were looking at this past season and the guy we'll be looking at coming into this season. So listen, I told you, I am rooting for Richardson. I see the upside. I've always seen the upside, but you do get a little annoyed when you hear a guy is one of a starting quarterback in a league where there's only 32 of those jobs. You cannot take that for granted. Here's hoping Anthony Richardson does not, but that was an episode. My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride the Bench Colts podcast. Like, subscribe if you have not yet. And as always, go Colts.